Good day everyone, Complaining Gamer here, back again with a follow-up video about RPCS3, a PS3 emulator. If you missed my previous coverage, it definitely ruffled a few feathers, which I honestly believe is a good thing. Occasionally, waking up the community is the quickest way to learn new information. If you have any experience in the emulation community, you'll know that sometimes receiving help is like getting blood from a stone. With that said, there were some illuminating nuggets of information gained from ruffling feathers, which ultimately benefits you, the viewer, and we're going to dive into them right now. My initial criticism of the RPCS3 YouTube coverage of Sonic Unleashed revolved around a lack of system specification details used to achieve the results shown, which has now been corrected. It was also pointed out that typically the team do include specs in each video description, but had initially forgotten to do so in this case. This is a point that many of you raised and that I'm happy to reiterate. RPCS3 is still in its alpha stages, currently sitting at version 0.0.5, build 7136 as of this content. This means that in alpha you should expect bugs, issues, crashes and general problems. In terms of expectation, I have and had none. It's far too subjective a point to discuss. You can consider technical hardware comparisons between console and PC specifications as a potential starting point for expected performance. However, how many users take that approach? I suspect not many. Given that RPCS3 presentations are done using an 8700K clocked at 5 GHz, this does not automatically mean that you need an overclocked 8700K to run the emulator to a satisfactory standard. A quick glance at user testimonials and comments will indicate the variety of hardware possibilities out there. The PlayStation 3's cell processor is famously complex and architecturally unique. To quote prominent community support member Hula Hoop, he said, "The cell architecture CPU had 7 cores, 1 PPU with a hyperthread and 6 SPU. So effectively emulation will require 2 PPU plus 6 SPU plus 1 RSX GPU plus 1 audio, plus 1 input, plus 1 UI thread. You're looking at 10 plus critical threads required to effectively run the emulator. Sure, current day CPUs are much stronger than Cell, but it justifies the hefty minimum requirements for RPCS3. The devs have made enormous progress by using recompiler and caching to overcome these problems, but 4 threads will simply never be enough for AAA titles no matter how much they optimize the emulator. However, games that do not use the PS3 hardware to its fullest potential can still definitely be played with your CPU. Also, Sonic Unleashed has just gone in-game and isn't even playable on the 8700K, which was what was used for the video on RPCS3's official channel. My personal miscalculation was testing Sonic Unleashed so early after going in-game, regardless of my CPU, when even the 8700K isn't keeping up, ultimately making a Sonic test a bad choice of title. There were a few crucial points which I couldn't address in my previous content. My main focus was the CPU demands of RPCS3, which are undoubtedly high. However, and more importantly, as some of you have pointed out, if sheer horsepower has become a main concern, then that's actually quite an achievement for an emulator still in alpha. If we can experience a number of titles going in-game with near perfect sound, visuals, physics and frame rate, then the emulator is already a success. Accurate emulation is always the focus before optimization and lowering hardware demands. As Hula Hoop stated, 4 cores and 4 threads at a moderate clock speed may never be quite enough for RPCS3 and AAA titles, but that does not mean that all games are out of reach. This is content I will endeavour to cover in the near future. Having said that, I do have a list of potential titles which I collated from community suggestions which are worth a try on 4-core CPUs with average clock speeds. These games are Catherine, Demon Souls, Dragon's Crown, Asura's Wrath, Drakengard 3, Dark Souls 2, Burn Zombie Burn, Kingdom Hearts 2, Disgaea 3, Dante's Inferno, Ni no Kuni, Nier Gestalt, and some would also throw in Persona 5. These games should be somewhat playable on a processor like mine, the i5-6400, but I'll need time to do the tests. Additionally, titles which fall into the category of visual novel or weeb and indie have a high probability of working well in this instance. It should also be noted that RPCS3 is free without limitation. Testing these titles will give us another perspective of what is possible on moderate systems. Clearly, testing Sonic Unleashed in RPCS3 on an i5-6400 processor was a bad combination. In this case, as RPCS3 coding stands today, the 6400 could not provide the cores or speed necessary. Having said that, this CPU has served me well in video editing and rendering, simultaneous recording and playing of emulators, OBS streaming, PC gaming, and a whole host of other lesser demanding tasks without missing a beat every single day. Other than a lack of physical cores and significant clock speed, the 6400 is also missing a technical element which RPCS3 utilizes to improve performance, and that is TSX. Unfortunately, the 6400 does not have the Intel-only TSX technology, whereas the next model up, the 6500, does. Taken from the RPCS3 April 2018 progress report regarding TSX. This PR provided major improvements to performance on TSX-enabled CPUs, high-end Intel Skylake and newer such as the i5-6600K and the i7-6700K and many others. Transactional Synchronization Extensions, TSX, is an extension to the x86 instruction set architecture that adds hardware transactional memory support, speeding up execution of multi-threaded software. While TSX support has been known since 2015, RPCS3 has been able to use it since 2017 and has now been improved upon. Thanks to this PR, users with compatible CPUs have reported upwards of 40% higher performance in some cases. There were also tests on non-TSX CPUs such as Ryzen, and similarly there was a noticeable improvement in performance, although not to the same extent. Subjectively, one of our testers with a Ryzen CPU reported that frame rate was not necessarily increased, but it stayed at a more constant level with less variability from second to second. So what do you do if you find yourself in this boat and really want to use RPCS3? Well, two options really. Play less demanding titles or upgrade your hardware. Optimization, the action of making the best or most effective use of a situation or resource. Typically focused on when the core components of an emulator are well established and stable. RPCS3 has undoubtedly been improving performance between builds, but given the alpha state it's in, we'll still be some way away from dedicating resources solely to optimization. Having said that, we can speculate on potential directions the team could go. Like many emulators in their infancy, a common trait a lot of them share is very high hardware demands. One potential avenue RPCS3 can explore in regard to offloading some of the processing stress in the future is on the currently highly underutilized GPU, a choice which other emulators have been able to take advantage of, and one I hope RPCS3 can too. On the topic of tweaks and adjustments in an attempt to squeeze out a few extra FPS from RPCS3, the default settings are more or less what you should use. The main recommendation from the community is to try changing preferred SPU threads to 1, 2 or 3 in the CPU setting. Some games do also benefit from title specific settings as well. Other than that, you're at the mercy of your hardware. When it comes to minimum requirements, I do still believe that the emulation community should do more to clarify at least roughly what gets your system through the door. With all the testing that goes on around the different systems used, it would be incredibly useful to collate that data. The good news is that a detailed RPCS3 wiki is currently in the works, so hopefully that will clear some things up in the future. Even though Sonic Unleashed was a bad choice on my system, I was still able to appreciate the graphical upscaler going from a native 720 to 4K with a minimal hit on the GPU, as the CPU was the bottleneck. More FPS would have typically seen higher usage of the GPU. Having said that, I was still able to find 30 FPS pockets using the classic Sky trick. Now, whilst I haven't had the chance or time to test the multiple titles as suggested earlier, I did pick up Catherine in time for this video, and I'm pleased to say Catherine worked flawlessly. Locked 60 FPS cutscenes, locked 30 FPS gameplay with on-point visuals and audio. The only inconvenience was that Catherine did not load to gameplay in the current RPCS3 build of 7136, so after a quick Google search I landed on build 6664 as one which would allow me to fully play Catherine past the Atlas logo. So what this means is my mission continues to find titles which will work for you on a system like mine, giving hope to those of you who don't have the most recent CPUs. So make sure to stick around for that. If you want to follow all things Complaining Gamer, social media links are provided. If you enjoyed the content, leave a like. If you didn't, dislike. And to keep up to date with all things emulation, subscribe and hit that bell icon. I'll catch you in the next one.